and welcome to another episode of Some of Our Parts, the podcast where two friends talk about the movies that add up to make us who we are. I'm Lindsay,
And I'm Jim.
and this week it is Jim's pick. We are rapidly approaching Thanksgiving. Crazy enough, we are each taking turns picking a Thanksgiving movie. And Jim, tell us what Thanksgiving movie you picked.
Well, I picked, to me, a real comedy classic. May not be in most people's minds, but I picked Planes, Trains, and Automobiles from 1987 with Steve Martin and John Candy, who I think are both comedic geniuses. John Candy, unfortunately, is no longer with us. And one of the reasons I picked this movie very vividly, I remember watching this movie, renting this movie from Blockbuster. Um,
Classic.
Watching it with my parents at Thanksgiving, like I
Mhm.
think it is the year after it came out. So, and my mother laughing throughout this entire movie, which I really did not anticipate. I had seen the movie before, and for whatever reason, I thought at Thanksgiving, I thought, oh, this will be funny, and my mom just loved it. So so this is it has a very special memory for me. But I do think it's a very funny movie, and it's a very touching, sweet movie for the holiday.
Yeah, I think it is a comedy classic. I had never seen it before, but it's one that I was very well aware of. And I think it's one I think that actually is a tradition for a lot of people to watch this at
Oh, okay.
Thanksgiving. And from what I read, it was both a success, in the box office and critically well received at the time that it came out. So I think I've always heard of it as mentioned among the great comedies and road trip movies and the buddy movie and
Mhm.
in that sort of realm, especially of comedy.
And it really it's I hadn't watched the movie in a long time, and looking at it, watching it, just more recently, it really is a reflection though of some of the excesses of the 80s. Steve Martin, who's evidently a well-to-do, in his business in marketing, whatever he does. And but my God, the suits fit horribly. The suits all look oversized, and baggy, but I can remember that's how we dressed. And then but and there it's just the dichotomy between the two characters about their backgrounds and stuff and how they each make a living. They're
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, so I was going to ask you if you had seen the movie before, and I'm glad that I introduced you to something that you hadn't seen at this point, and I hope you like John Candy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe to let you watch, or maybe make you watch a few other things that he's done. So
Sure. I'm familiar with John Candy, right? I've watched, I think for me, uh Cool Runnings. There's a
hmm
part in this where he briefly talks about Jamaica, and I was like, there it is. Cool Runnings. And he has a small part in Home Alone, but I think a small memorable part
yeah,
that also does kind of remind me of this movie, but it's also, um I think John Hughes maybe produced those movies. Um More Chicago area movies,
right.
Uh But yeah, and I've seen Uncle Buck and stuff like that. So I'm
That,
I'm
that,
familiar with him, but I had never seen this one before. And of course, Steve Martin,
oh,
obviously still going. And I watched in the 90s, I watched Father of the Bride and Father of the Bride 2. And obviously now he's on Only Murders in the Building. And when I was a teenager, he was in the Cheaper by the Dozen movies.
oh, okay.
And then when I got older, I watched The Jerk and
And I think
Three
the jerk,
Amigos.
was the jerk around this same time period as well,
I feel like The Jerk might have been a little bit older.
older. So, but to me,
It's 1979, so it's about a decade older.
yeah, almost a decade. So, I mean, this was like really, I guess, when he was really popular as a stand-up. I
Hmm.
remember seeing him live in person when he was doing his King Tut routine and
I
stuff.
was gonna say, is didn't he do the King Tut
Oh my
song?
God. And but some of the mannerisms you can see in this, in his characteristics, his physical, stature and so on and so forth. And he was,
Hmm.
I don't know how old I don't know how old he is, but he was younger, and this was more of his a little bit. You could see his stand up routine, his kind of his some of his waving the arms and stuff, and then doing the
Yeah.
man stuff. But
Yes, like the part where he's like yelling at John Candy. Um,
he's talking about being a chatty Cathy, and he's like,
yes, he's like, you pull the string, like doing that the arm motion and stuff. Yeah, I think it looks like he's born in 1945, so I guess he was in
oh,
his
so he
early
was,
40s
yeah, so he
when
was,
this
yeah.
movie came out. But it's hard to know because his hair has been like white for so
Oh,
long.
oh yeah. His hair was white back in the '70s when I saw him, because I saw him before I left
Yeah.
I saw him in Huntington, West Virginia.
Oh
So
wow.
go
You
figure.
can tell the difference because his eyebrows were still dark in this movie. Now
Exact.
it's
And
all
he had
white.
more hair. So
Yes. Yes, he definitely has less hair now.
yeah.
But yeah, I
Other
think these are both people that I've been familiar with. And then obviously this movie is written and directed by John Hughes,
yeah, come
like
on. Yeah.
classic.
Hmm. I mean, you could probably, what? How many movies did he put out? I mean, crank out during his career, especially between the late '70s and early '90s.
Right. I mean, I made a list of
Give
some.
give us. I was going to say,
He directed 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Uncle Buck, She's Having a Baby. He wrote National Lampoon's Vacation and Christmas Vacation. He wrote Mr. Mom, Pretty in
ooh,
Pink, Beethoven,
oh,
just to name a
the,
few.
yeah, yeah. So impressive body of work there. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of the reason why people like this movie is because he'd been doing a lot of those teenage movies, and this was a departure for him.
yeah,
Uh,
where everyone's an adult. Well, for the most part,
yeah.
the characters are adults as opposed to
Right.
angst-ridden teenagers. So,
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
although there
And
is some angst.
there is some angst for sure. For sure, it wouldn't. I mean, how could we have something without angst? But and we get the Chicago,
Hmm.
everything in and around Chicago, of course.
That bears.
It's funny. We were talking about Chris Farley before we started recording, and like that is what I.
Oh,
That was the other thing I think of is like
yeah,
those
the
sketches
skits
on
with,
Saturday Night Live.
right, we're the Chicago Bears fans.
Yeah, my one of my math teachers in high school was from Chicago, and my junior year when I had him, I was a fan of the Colts because I was a Peyton Manning fan,
Oh,
and they were
oh,
playing. That was the year that they beat Chicago in the Super Bowl. And leading up to it, every time I passed him in the hallway, he would just go, "The Bears," every time. And then the
lo and
Colts won.
behold,
And I was like,
yes.
I'm sorry, what
Mm,
did you say?
excuse
Did you
me, yes.
the who?
The who? The who?
The what? So but yeah, so I think, yeah, this is like a movie that I've heard of a million times. It's a movie that like the people involved in it are people that like I like other things I've seen from them, of course.
Hmm.
Splash, I forgot about Splash for
Oh gosh, yeah,
John Candy. I
with
loved
John
watching
Candy.
Splash when I was a kid. I think because I was like I got into like The Little Mermaid and then I was like, "Oh,
Mm,
more
we're,
mermaids?
yeah,
I'm in."
I'm in.
So I watched Splash a lot when I was a kid. But yeah, so I think all these people and everybody involved, I'm like, I'm sold. I had just never like watched it. It had never kind of come up. So I was happy to have a reason to dive in. And I think ultimately it was a very funny movie, very kind of like I think like prototypical road movie. Like I do think a lot of the ones I grew up watching do draw from this.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, we were talking about again, like Chris Farley, Tommy Boy. I think Tommy Boy reminds me a lot of this.
I could see that.
There's a movie that came out more recently. I think it's called Due Date with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis.
I've
And like
not seen
Robert
that.
Downey Jr. is trying to get to like the birth of his kid, and he's like the uptight businessman, and Zach Galifianakis is like the wacky, wild and
Mm,
crazy guy, who like they get stuck with. And again, it follows a similar arc, right? Of like ultimately this is a person who's like a kind, like hearted person, despite being,
A little out there.
yeah, eccentric. I was going to say eccentric or a lot, a
Oh,
lot,
well, yeah. So
kind of a lot. But so yeah, I think that it's a fun movie. And I do think that it's like, in some ways, I feel like that is the spirit of like, not just Thanksgiving, but the holidays in general, because, families and the people we love
are
are still people.
and can still drive us crazy. Can
Yes.
or and just sometimes you feel like you just can't be around them one more minute, and then the next minute you're not with them. You miss them. They're
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like everybody loves each other. Like that's what, even when Steve Martin or Neil, he plays Neil, is like super uptight, like he's is that way because he just wants to get home to see his family and like his little kids.
right.
Little Matthew Lawrence with his big old teeth.
Oh my
And
good, and that haircut.
the bowl haircut, which is like the same haircut. He has like a slightly larger version of that in Mrs. Doubtfire. Uh, but and then like, John Candy or Dell is
Mm,
is super wacky and annoying, but it is because he's like craving like connecting with other people. So it is like sort of love at the root, which I think is a good general vibe for Thanksgiving and like getting into the holiday season.
agreed. It's peace on earth and goodwill towards men. So
Exactly.
it's the time of the year that you hopefully you overlook your friends or your fellow man's shortcomings or whatever they may be in your eyes and accept them for what they are, or at least extend that hand.
Yeah.
So, and God knows we need more of that, especially right now.
Yeah.
Just saying. So,
Yes. Agreed. Agreed. But yeah, I think that I was happy that you picked it. I was glad to watch
well,
it.
good, good. I'm glad.
And
I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad
yeah.
that you get to see a movie that I always enjoy seeing movies that I haven't seen before and where other
Hmm.
people have talked about it. So,
Yeah.
um,
The other thing I want to say, there are so many like famous people with like small cameos in this of like
yeah,
people that you recognize from other things. Like some that I know by name. One you get in like the first couple minutes.
exactly.
But some other ones that I'm like, this person has been in a million things. I wrote their names down.
Oh, okay. I'm
So
glad
we could we can
you're detail oriented that way. So, but yeah, like
yeah.
you were
Well,
saying,
I'm
oh,
also
that's
that
so and
person who's
so.
like, where have I seen this person before? Which episode of Law and Order SVU were they on?
That's what. Yeah, that's right. I know Lindsay's got it was season 4, episode
I will
17.
tell you, Steve Martin's wife in this movie, I was like, that lady looks familiar. Looked at her Wikipedia, Law and Order SVU.
There you
That
go.
is why I know her face.
She looked familiar to me too, and I did look her up, but I couldn't really place her where I'd seen her anywhere else. But she
Yeah,
does look
I
familiar.
had to assume that it was just the like Law and Order stuff, but she's one of those people that's been on like a lot of different
Oh, okay.
shows. So
Yeah.
like a lot of those people. So we'll talk her. I wrote her name down actually. It's Layla Robbins.
Yeah.
So now she's on a show now called The Boys and Gen V, which is like they're the shows on Prime that's about like the like sort of modern superheroes.
Oh, okay. I know
She's
what you're
on those
talking about.
shows now, but she's been on like all the Law and Orders.
Oh, okay. So
I'm an SVU
she's
girl, so I'm sure I recognize her from that. But like she's been on like a ton of TV and stuff. It seems like a lot of TV, perhaps
so
mostly,
Law and
but
Order's more or less paid her for her house and her lifestyle.
well,
So,
I think she's only been on like one episode of each, so I don't know about all that, but
well, hey, yeah,
she's probably getting residuals from this movie too. If people are watching this every Thanksgiving,
there you go. So
so good on it. Everybody keep on planes, trains, and automobiles.
there you go. So, do you want to start us off with the intro and then the rundown?
Sure. So the movie starts in the screen tells us we were in New York City and it's 2 days before Thanksgiving. First of all, I feel like that's where you go wrong. You can't try to you gotta he should have gone like a couple days before.
Exactly. Exactly.
But in any case, he had to work. Steve Martin, who plays Neil, is the character's name. He works in marketing for like a cosmetics company. Neil Page. And they're sitting in meetings, and it looks like the worst meeting ever because they're waiting for the boss to like weigh in on their new ad campaign. And he's just looking at it. And it's just people sitting at the table waiting for the boss to say something. And he'll like open his mouth and then close it. And he'll like look at them and then not say anything. And eventually they're dismissed. He's like, we'll reconvene after the holiday. So they just sat there for no reason.
And gee,
And
how many of us have ever sat in meetings like that?
right, relatable. Meanwhile,
Uh-huh.
Steve Martin has a ticket in his hand that says 6 o'clock. He's leaving LaGuardia, wherever, at six
Right. And
o'clock
then flying to,
to fly to Chicago, which is where he lives. That's where his family is. It seems a
I
little
get
wild to bring him in for a meeting right before Thanksgiving, but
it. And I guess it's only, I was looking at the times, it's only a 45-minute flight.
yeah, I don't feel like that's true.
I
But
don't know. I didn't fact check that. So,
I mean, just like knowing, like when I fly, if I fly, for example, from Baltimore to Cincinnati, it's like an hour. And I don't think that New York City is not closer to
to
Chicago
Chicago, I
than
didn't think,
that.
I wasn't sure. So I never thought to look.
Maybe there was less air traffic in 1987. I don't know. Or maybe they like, maybe were flights shorter pre 9/11. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe there were like less restrictions or something. Anyways, I did look at that and I was like, that doesn't feel right.
I know. It's,
I didn't fact check it, but I was like, that just doesn't like the what I know about the geography of the United States. That does not really work
oh,
for me.
oh, I was sitting there thinking, wait a minute, is there a time? There is a time zone difference, but that wouldn't account for it wouldn't say that, it wouldn't mean the flight was any, you know what isn't there a time zone
Actually, you
difference?
know what? It might be local time.
Oh, maybe that's what
So
it
if it,
was.
it says
So
it
it would
says
be an
local time,
hour and
so it would be
45 minutes.
7:45. Okay,
R-
that makes more sense. I'm glad we talked through that. I'm
Woo,
glad we talked through that.
load off
That
my mind.
they do put local time. Like when we would fly to like Texas or when I fly to Texas with my family, it's local
Right.
time. So it looks like it's shorter. Okay. I'm glad that we that we solved that.
Okay.
I
So
hope maybe if other people had this concern, we've allayed it.
we've solved that mystery.
There you go. Because Chicago is in central time. So it would
So,
be
so,
7:45 in New York. That makes much more sense time-wise.
so, so in addition to reviewing movies, we also solve time mysteries. So
Exactly.
just
We're like Mythbusters over here.
exactly. So yeah. So bring it on, people. So
Yes. Steve Martin, they finally get out of this meeting, right? He's heading down. His colleague is like, you are not going to make the 6 o'clock flight. But he's like, he's determined because he told his wife and kids he was going to be home.
mhm.
So he is hustling outside to get a taxi. And apparently everyone else in the world is also trying to get a taxi. Like the line of people trying to get a taxi is crazy.
It's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah. He looks ahead and sees one that's kind of in the middle of traffic. But across the street, someone else has seen the same taxi. And who is that someone else? Kevin Bacon.
Very young Kevin Bacon.
Very young Kevin Bacon. I think I read so he'd been in She's Having a Baby. Uh
Oh, okay.
and I guess he wanted to work with John Hughes again. So he got this little bit part.
Hmm.
So it's a foot race. And at first Steve Martin is winning, but then he trips over this giant trunk and Kevin Bacon gets the taxi. Some other like businessman type hails one, and Steve Martin is like, "Can I please just take this? I'm like late for my flight." The guy is not inclined to help him. Eventually, he's willing to. The guy will give it up if he pays money. The best part, he's like, Steve Martin's offering him $10, $20. The guy's like, no, $50. And he's like, okay. And he's like, well, if you're willing to pay $50, you're probably willing to pay $75. And he says, Steve Martin says, you're a thief. And the guy says, close enough. I'm an attorney.
It's a great line.
Zing.
And the guy does have that air of, he's like that very, sophisticated, very nose up in the air kind of attitude about him, don't you think? The attorney.
Yeah. So, but meanwhile, while they're having this discussion, John Candy, who plays Del Griffith, he's the owner of that big old trunk that Neil tripped over. He's loading up in the taxi, and they are taking off. And now Steve Martin is pissed because he lost the taxi and he's out 75 bucks. So he runs after the car like a crazy person and he nearly catches up. Well, when they like stop, he kind
Yeah,
of catches up and he like makes direct eye contact with John Candy as Del Griffith. But then the taxi keeps going and he's stuck. So he ends up taking the bus to the airport and flights are delayed because the weather in Chicago is bad, as it is wont to be.
like you said, he should have left 2 days earlier.
Right. Or like check the weather, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I wrote down something here, and took it for granted. We take it for granted, I think, now these days. But back in, no cell phones.
Yeah.
No up to date, last minute, directions or weather forecast or whatever it is. You have to get to a payphone, because I thought that throughout the entire movie. About
Mm-hmm.
calling. You called from a payphone, or wherever it may be. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And gee, weren't things so inconvenient?
Yeah. He could have just called an Uber.
Yeah,
Also,
or
I
one
would
on
have
his
taken
phone.
take the subway, but
True, true that.
in any case, the flight's delayed. We also get a little cutback to his family in Chicago to meet them. So we see his wife. He has three little kids, like a daughter and two.
Well, I know daughter and a son. And I don't know what the youngest
I
is.
forget that there's a little one
I
too.
think it's a
There's three
boy.
kids.
I think it's a
I
boy.
think he says like, "Where's my like little boy?" when they get home at
Yeah,
the end. But
yeah.
so it's like some girl, little baby Matthew Lawrence, and then another little kid. And
Joey
they're just
Lawrence's,
yes,
yeah,
of the
sibling.
Lawrence brothers, Joey, Matthew, Andrew. They were on a show that I liked. Obviously, like Joey Lawrence was on Blossom, but when I was a kid, there was also a show that all three of them were on called Brotherly Love, that I was a
I
fan of.
don't know that one, so can't
It's
say that I.
like in the show, like two of them were brothers, and like the other one was like maybe like their long lost brother. I don't know. They like lived above a mechanic shop. I feel like it was something like
Hmm.
that. Anyways, and then they were on some Disney things too. I think that show probably came on Disney also. Anyways, so we get to see his cute family. They live in like the house looks just like the Home Alone house. That's
It
like
does, doesn't it?
John Hughes's like vibe is like that
Right.
big colonial house
I,
in
I
the
was going to say
Chicago
it's got the
area.
colonial with the little side thing off to it.
Yeah.
It's a, he's.
It looks just like the Home Alone house. So that's they're all in the same neighborhood, I guess. Um, so back to New York. The flight is delayed. He realizes he sits at the gate and he sees a person across from him and he's like, that guy looks familiar. And he realizes it is John Candy, Del Griffith, who stole his cab. And he confronts him. And Del Griffith is like, oh, hey, I knew you look familiar. Like, he's just like super good natured about it, does not pick up on any like hostility. He's just like, oh, hey, man, what's up? Finally, it's time to get on the plane. And it just like it's just so funny. Steve Martin is arguing because he had booked a first class seat, but now because he's on a different flight, it's not available. So he's got to sit in coach, and he's like, I don't want to sit in coach. Which it was very funny. I was watching Real Housewives last night,
Uh-huh.
and there was a woman on Real Housewives who was having like the same complaint. They were flying from like California to Utah, which is like it's like a 45-minute flight. And she was like, I haven't sat in coach since college. And then I watched this and I was like, oh my God, he's Lisa Barlow.
Oh, there you go. So
He's Lisa Barlow from the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. But anyways, finally is like, okay, it probably can't get any worse than this. And then cut to his seatmate, John Candy, and he's sitting in the middle seat, which is the objectively the worst place to be sitting.
it is. And for those of you who don't know John Candy, by the way, he is was a large person, so a plus size.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, and so there's a little bit of squeezing in.
Yes. And he is also one of those people that he's a talker. He is chatting away. And the best part is he's one of those people who's a talker that's like, don't you hate when people like can't take the hint to stop talking and they just keep talking over and over and over again? And it's like,
Just can't
wow,
keep their mouth shut.
just no self-awareness. And he just like it just gets worse and worse because he like takes off his shoes and he's like, oh God, it feels so good to take my shoes off. Then he takes off his sock
Socks.
and then he's like airing it out and like hitting Steve Martin in the face. And then the old guy on the other side of Steve Martin falls asleep and is like leaning on him and snoring. And then John Candy, I will say one thing about John Candy, Del Griffith is a character. He knows what's up because he says, we're not landing in Chicago.
Well, I
And
kept thinking that because it got dark and people were
yeah.
asleep, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, this is only a 45-minute flight. Like they should be landing, you know. Now that we figured out it's actually an hour and 45 minutes, but even still, yeah, so they're up in the air a longer time than I would think to get from New York to Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Because it's late, they're asleep for the most part. Yeah, John Candy says something like, "Oh, $6," and something else says we're not landing in Chicago or whatever, you know, whatever
Yes.
Midwestern saying that he's, you know, whatever that's
Yeah.
supposed to mean. So,
The overall vibe is he's like, we're not landing in Chicago. And lo and behold, they land in Wichita, Kansas. And Steve Martin calls his wife and she's like, why are you in Wichita? Like he chose to be there.
right.
Like, I want to be here on purpose. No.
Well, and then
Um,
she sort of almost accuses him, like, "What's going on?" You know, like
yeah.
he's you know avoiding coming home for
Right.
Thanksgiving. You
Yeah.
know,
I did read that there was like a plot they cut out where she like thinks he's lying and thinks he's like cheating on her.
oh, I kind of got that feeling that maybe
Yeah.
there was an undercurrent of that.
Yeah.
So,
So I
yeah,
think there's like in this original draft or there's more of that throughout. So that like makes more sense.
in
But
the director's extended cut version.
right. Also, like, ma'am, you live in Chicago. Look outside.
That's what I was going to say. It's like, well, wait a minute. Can't you figure out that there's a big snowstorm there in Chicago and no planes are landing ever?
There are weather forecasts. It's 1987. It's not 1927. There you can watch the
Yeah,
weather on TV. You can look
exactly.
outside.
Right. Yeah. So
Uh so yeah, I was like, that's silly. Do you think he wants to be who want no offense to people in Kansas, but like
I know. Yeah. Although
there's a
Toto, we're
reason
not in
why yeah,
Kansas anymore.
exactly. If people usually have to choose Oz or Kansas, they're probably going Oz.
Just
Um,
saying. So yeah.
but yeah, I was just like, of course he doesn't want to be in Wichita, lady.
Right.
Also, having had been on a plane before that had to land somewhere else other than the destination, it's so annoying. It's
Hmm.
and that's worse. Like I one time like I was supposed to go to Cincinnati and we landed in Columbus because there was a storm over Cincinnati. And like at
Oh,
least
okay.
that's like not that far.
Right. Yeah.
But Wichita is far.
I was going to say they're a lot further west, right, than
Yeah.
Chicago, right?
Yeah. There I mean, it's like sort of the next like line of
Right.
states to the left, yeah. And then you still got to go up through like right like they I mean as we see, they have to go through Missouri to get to Illinois. Uh but yeah, like it was I just remember being so I was supposed to meet my family for dinner and I we landed at the Columbus airport and for some reason even though it was a Friday at
Hmm.
7 p.m. like all the restaurants were closing so I
Really?
couldn't get any food. Yeah.
Oh
It was a
gosh.
Friday during March Madness. I
In
was like
Columbus?
in Columbus. I was like Ohio State is here.
I was
This
going to
isn't
say
like the
that's
middle of nowhere.
right.
This
It's
is
not
the
like
capital of this stupid state.
It's not Sandusky or Chillicothe, you know?
Right. It's like this is the capital of this state and it's home to one of the largest universities in this country. A university that is usually playing in March Madness. You don't want to have a bar restaurant open to make
Right.
money for people to watch games?
And plus, you were there. I'm sure it's what was it, when the early 2000s or
No, it was like a couple of years ago. It
oh,
was like
so even
2022.
so yeah, so come on now, yeah. So I mean, I can remember when restaurants closed at 9 o'clock or so, but
Or it
even
might have
then,
been right.
was it
I can't
before
remember.
COVID?
It might have been, or it might have been 20, like
During
20.
COVID? You wouldn't have been on a plane during COVID, would you?
Well, I was, but I can't
Oh,
remember. But it wasn't that long ago. If it was before COVID, it was like shortly.
oh, okay.
It was like 2019.
Gotcha.
That was as far
Oh,
back as it
yeah.
could have
So,
been.
yeah.
So yeah, I was like, so yeah, it couldn't have been before 2019. So it's not like it was like a long time ago. Like we
Right.
can't keep a dinner place open past 7 at an airport. You have a captive audience. You guys don't want to make money? Anyways, so they are in Wichita, and once again, John Candy is like, I don't think we're getting on a flight to Chicago, so you better book a hotel right now because there's going to be a
Right.
rush. And once again, he is correct. Ben Stein is at the desk and he announces Flight 909 to Chicago is canceled. That's not, my Ben Stein's not good. Bueller, that's better.
That's what it sounded like was when he did Bueller, and but
Clear eyes. That's what I
and then
always
he
say. I
sort of
was,
smiles, when he says the flight's
yeah.
canceled,
I
like,
always remember him from the Clear Eyes commercials. Him going, Clear
oh
Eyes.
yeah. Oh, I forgot those. Yeah, he did. Yeah,
Yeah.
those were good.
So, Dell was correct. Steve Martin gets in line to ask for a hotel room, and guess what? There are none left. But Del Griffith, so also backing up a little bit, Del Griffith, John Candy's character, is a salesman who sells shower curtain rings. And we know that Neil works in marketing, which he tells John Candy. So the good thing about being a salesman is that you travel a lot and you know people wherever you go. So Dell is like, hey, listen, I got a hotel room. I know like the guy who owns a hotel. I can get him to hook you up. If you just pay for a taxi for the both of us to get there, then I'll make sure you get a room.
Right.
And Steve Martin is like, well, I have no other option. Um,
Well, like he looks over and he sees a guy sleeping on the floor, trying to sleep on the floor, and he thinks, "Yeah, I'm gonna go to the motel." So it's
yes, yes. So they're in the taxi, which is like a very weird taxi. Like the music is weird. Um, the uh the like the decor, the taxi driver, his name's Doobie. Um, he's played by Larry Hankin, who's another one of those actors that's like in a million things. I remember him mostly from Billy Madison. He's like one of the guys that works for like the hotel corporation, like below Bradley Whitford.
okay.
Um, that's what I remember him from, but he's like been in a bunch of other things. Like he was in Home Alone, he was in Escape from Alcatraz, Running
Oh,
Scared, Friends, Breaking Bad. Like so he's been in a
and he
million
looks he
things.
looks really sketchy. And the cab is
It's
it,
got like tassel fringe, like a trim around the windows and stuff.
and it's
And
got some
also
Mexican name or something, doesn't it? Like it's a
something.
his
Yeah.
yeah.
He's playing weird music. His name is Doobie and he's not driving on the highway. He's like, "Oh, well, you need to like see the state." And Steve Martin is like, "It's the middle of the night. Like I can't see anything."
Right.
So they get to this hotel and what I thought was funny too is the John Candy asked the guy for a hotel room. He's like, "Okay." But he just gives them one hotel room. Also, I will say a minor snafu happens here that comes up later. They both have the like diners club
Diners Club card.
card, which I sounds familiar. Like that was like a thing at the
It was
time.
one of the first credit cards.
Okay.
Diners Club. Yeah, so
Yeah. So they both pay with their diners club cards and but they take the wrong one. They switch because they're the same.
right.
And this is I love this when they had like the credit card machines at the hotel with like the carbon paper that they like
Uh-huh.
run the thing over it.
Yeah, you swipe it. You swipe the
Yeah,
card. Yeah.
before there was like electronic anything. So they get a room, but it's one room with one bed. Which is funny. It made me laugh because that's also such like a rom-com thing, right? Like, oh
Hmm.
no, there's only one bed. And it's funny to just think of that trope with John Candy and Steve Martin, which
And
we'll see.
it's not like a queen size bed. It looks like a twin, maybe a full, for but it's not a big bed.
Yeah, it's not. It is
Yeah.
not big. And it's just they're also both like kind of awkward about it when they see it.
Yeah, when they go in.
They're
So
like, "Oh, okay. All right." Uh Steve Martin uses the bathroom to take a shower after John Candy's been in there, and he just the water cuts off and then it cuts back on and it's like super hot. He gets out of the shower and John Candy has his shit just like everywhere, and not literal shit, his stuff. That
yeah.
would be even worse. Um
He's used all the towels.
yes, and all that's left is like one little washcloth for Steve Martin to dry himself off. The like floor is wet. It's disgusting.
It is. There's a newspaper on the floor that's soaked. I mean, there's water on the floor. It's cigarette butts in an ashtray. That it's just, you know,
Yeah. Also, John Candy is smoking like constantly in this movie. My man is a chimney.
yep. He's a chain smoker.
So, meanwhile, John Candy is on the bed. I love he sets up a photo of his wife on the nightstand next to him, like everywhere they go. But it's one of those beds that you put the change in and it shakes.
It vibrates
So he's just sitting there with the vibrating bed. Um, I'm like
while
I'm
he's
shaking.
smoking. That's the thing that worries me.
Yes.
That I'm afraid the cigarette's going to, yeah.
Well, foreshadowing. Um, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Also for people who are listening to this, you can't see me, but I was actually shaking.
She was doing a good job, by the way. So at first I
Thanks.
thought there was an earthquake over her at her place. So
Yes, yes. Then when it's time to go to sleep, it's not a big bed. They don't have any space, and it's so like awkward. They're both just like uncomfortable. There's also I don't think we saw this, but there was a scene cut out, but we learned that there was beer that was on the bed when it was shaking and a can exploded. So Steve Martin is like, of course it exploded. You had it on the bed when it was shaking. So now Steve Martin's side of the bed is wet
with
with beer.
beer. Yeah.
He's sleeping in a puddle of beer. Then like Dell, I guess he has trouble sleeping. He's like reading with a lighter, which also I was like, you're gonna light this book on fire.
That's what I thought was going to happen. And I stood and this time when I was watching, I thought, does he set the book on fire? So,
I know there's a fire.
hmm.
And then he's like cracking like every joint in his body. He's clearing his throat and like he says he's clearing his sinuses. He sounds like he's hawking loogies, and
Yeah.
it's disgusting. And Steve Martin's trying to sleep, and eventually Steve Martin like freaks out. He gets up and he's like, "I am leaving." He's like putting on clothes. He's gonna go sleep in the lobby. And Dell's like, wow, you are like very uptight. And Steve Martin is kind of like, F you. And he's like, oh, and you're hostile too. And I love this part. He's like, I even let you pay for the hotel room first so you wouldn't feel like an intruder. How generous.
I know. And paid for the cab.
Yeah. I'd let you do all of this so you wouldn't feel like you're taking advantage of me. Um, they argue over like whose fault it all is, going back and forth. Neil starts to just like kind of rip into Dell, like
Oh,
you tell all these stories, and maybe when you tell stories, you should try to tell a story that like has a point or is funny, because your stories are boring. You don't need an anecdote for everything. You're like going on a date with a chatty Cathy doll with the string you pull, except you just keep pulling the string.
it really is a pretty classic, piece of work, I think,
Yeah.
because he just rips into him and just doesn't let up. So
Yeah, and John Candy, Dell calls him intolerant, and he's like, "Oh, now I can tolerate anything. Having gone through this, I could tolerate a multiple day insurance seminar if I could tolerate you." And Dell is obviously like hurt.
I mean, he's almost to, it looks like he's going to cry, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. John Candy does do. I imagine him in like the when he makes like that face, I imagine him in his Spaceballs costume as like the giant like puppy.
Yes. Because
That's like what it.
he has those puppy eyes, you know, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's like these, he just looks so wounded.
Yeah. And he's like, you know what? I do talk too much, but I am also like kind. I don't try to hurt people's feelings. And I like me, and so do other people. Like my wife likes me, other people like me. And clearly they do, right? Because he
Yeah.
knows all these people who are like,
And
hey, Dell. Like,
yeah, like the hotel manager or owner or
mhm.
whatever, he was like, "Hey, old buddy, old pal," and
Yeah. And then Neil feels bad. So he eventually, they both get back into bed and go to sleep. The next, also while they're asleep,
yeah.
some little teenager breaks in and steals all the cash from their wallets. This is another tip, folks. Don't leave your wallets out in a hotel.
And don't
I'm
leave your money in your wallet when you do.
also that they have safes.
Yeah.
Um, so that's not good. Mind you, again, they are trying to be in Chicago. They are in Wichita, Kansas. So the next morning, they are spooning. Dell is the big spoon, just wrapped all up around Neil, kissing him on his ear. And then Neil wakes up and he's like, Dell. Also, there's like Cracker Jacks scattered all
Oh,
over
there's
on
snacks
the bed.
everywhere.
It's a
Yeah.
mess.
It,
So Neil wakes up, he's like, Dell, why are you kissing me on my ear? And he's like, where's your other hand? And Dell's like, it's between these two pillows. And Neil's like, those are not pillows. And they both like leap up.
this
And
is,
they're
to
like,
me, this is a classic scene of the movie. This is,
yeah, it's like,
yeah.
oh, how about the
Oh,
Bears? The
how
Bears are looking
about,
great, huh?
yeah. But they're both like, ew,
Yes.
it's like,
They're both like so freaked out and like grossed out and just like, but we're men, right? We are manly
manly,
men,
manly men. Yes,
manly
yes.
men. The Bears, the Bears. How about the Bears?
It was great.
Yeah. Then Neil's trying to do his like, morning hygiene, but Dell's got socks in the sink. Neil picks up what he thinks is a towel to dry his face. It's a pair of Dell's
Under
tidy whities. And Neil's
what
just like, oh, disgusted.
when he's blotting his face with the water, and then he like smells his hands, and he looks down in the water in the sink. Yeah, has these socks in it.
Right.
It's the sight gags, I just think, throughout the movie. It
Yeah.
made me laugh out loud again, all over again, after all these years. So
Yes.
anyway,
So it's time to get going. And Dell, once again, he kind of knows what's up. He's like, listen, you should not try to take a plane to Chicago at this point because there's days of plane traffic backed up. So you're not going to get on like the first go round. I know a guy because Dell always knows a guy who can get us on a train. So they're eating at like a diner,
yeah.
and Neil realizes he has no cash. And he accuses Dell of robbing him. And Dell's like, no, look, I have this exact amount in my wallet. And Dell realizes he doesn't have any cash either.
Yeah. I love the look on his face when he pulls out his wallet and he goes, "If there's $1 more in there than whatever that amount was," he goes, "then you can call me a thief." And
Mhm.
Steve Martin looks at it and he goes, "Yeah, there's nothing there." He goes, "What?" He's like, he's genuinely shocked.
Right. Also, like, this is such a throwback too, because Steve Martin had $700 in his wallet. I was like, imagine anyone carrying $700 of cash right now. You do?
Not now, but back
Okay.
then, yeah. I mean, if I
That's what
didn't have a credit cards, but if I was
no, that's why I'm
traveling,
saying that's a throwback. Like imagine it if someone today said they have $700 in their wallet, I'm robbing them.
well, I've been known to have that much on me at some time. So, but I'm just so. But back then, like when especially when we traveled for work, I worked for the VA, and we would travel.
Yeah,
We would get our travel money in advance, and it was always cash. So,
that's wild.
we just carried cash, and we paid for cash. We paid cash for everything. So,
I would be so nervous to have that much cash.
oh, I'm nervous now, but back then I didn't. You didn't think
Yeah,
anything of it. It's just
right,
what you did. So,
right.
yeah.
Now I mostly just ever have cash if I like want to get there's like a food truck I like
That only
that only
takes
takes
cash.
cash.
So,
Yeah. I got cash like when I had jury duty, so I used it for that.
okay, there you
It
go.
was funny because then I got cash, I got lunch that day and I paid with cash, and I feel like the people are always like, what?
Mhm.
It's like you got the jury duty crowd, you're getting some cash today.
That's right, baby. That's right. So,
Um, so anyways, they realize they've been robbed, but Dell's dude is sending his son to pick them up to take them to the city to get on the train. And this like old beat up pickup truck
oh my
rolls up
God.
with the redneck of all rednecks getting out. This actor is another person who's been in a million things. His name is Dylan Baker. He's one of those people that I was like, I don't know him like by name, but like
Oh
you've seen
yeah,
his face before.
exactly.
He's been in some of the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire. He was in Anchorman 2. He was on the show The Good Wife. He's been on a lot of TV shows.
That's where I remember him from, The Good Wife.
He
So,
was also in the movie Selma. He played J. Edgar Hoover. So
mm,
he's been in like a ton of things. Um, so he's got like dip packed in his mouth. He's
hmm
spitting,
hmm
and like people spitting out like chewing tobacco and dip is just that great
plus
that
he's not very
brown
good at it.
no. And it's that like brown swamp water spit.
Uh-huh.
And they're gonna have to ride in the back, which they're not like super into at first, but he has his lady and child in the car. And the lady's also scary because he's like her first baby came out sideways. She didn't scream or nothing.
And
So
then he tells her to go get the trunk.
yeah.
Remember, he says,
Yes, because she's strong. And they're like, oh
yeah,
no, we got it. We got
yeah,
it.
yeah. It's like she gets out of it. Yeah, she's like 4 foot nothing,
She's
and
it's like she's little and skinny, but she's strong.
wiry,
Wiry. Uh
wiry.
but they're like, no, we got it. So Neil and Dell are riding in the back of a pickup truck through again what appears to be the scenic route. Because Neil keeps being like, how long is this? And Dell's like, well, if he goes this way, it'll be about 30 miles, but he might be going a different way and it's about 75. There's also a dog in the back with them that is like trying to bite Neil actively.
Well,
And
Neil's
it's
trying to grab those gloves, remember, because
yes.
he'd left his gloves in New York, and now
Hmm.
and they're outside. And then I also like the fact that he goes, "What do you think the temperature is?" He goes, "One."
Hmm. So it's cold. They finally, which we can tell when they finally arrive at the train station, and they are both like their faces are frozen in like a grimace with like frost in their eyebrows and mustaches.
And the
Yes.
dog is like frozen. I love that. They're they're like they look like they've been through a blizzard. So,
Yeah. So they get to the train station, and they're gonna go their separate ways. Dell's trying to get Neil's address because he's like, oh, I gotta pay you back for the train ticket because Neil
mm,
pays for the train ticket because he's like, okay, you got us here, I'll pay for the tickets. And I think he has more credit cards than Dell doesn't.
well,
Dell just has the Diners Club.
well, and Dell had the big and tall men's
Oh yes.
card. Like oh, they have 7 stores in the
In
northeast
the
or
Pacific
whatever.
Northwest, I think
Yeah,
is what he
so he
says.
goes, yeah,
Um,
and
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 Neil has like a Neiman Marcus one, so he's like, if we want to get a gift for someone,
yeah,
but
and he has a gas card, which that was
yes.
a big thing back then too. Like
Mm.
Shell had their own gas card,
I feel like my parents had like a Texaco card in the
Texaco and
90s.
Sunoco,
Mm.
because
Um,
I had a
yeah, because
Sunoco card.
there
I
was
was
a Texaco right by our house when I was a kid.
big stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah,
But Neil's trying to get away from Dell. So he's like, no, no,
hmm,
no, it was a gift. Don't worry about it. Like, happy trails. Bye.
right. Peace out.
So, everything's going good on the train. Neil's taking a nap. He's vibing. And then the train has some sort of mechanical engine failure. It's sputtering black smoke and it comes to a stop. And they all have to like then walk through a field to the highway to
Yeah, it
get
was
on
like
like a
it's like a
bus.
mile. The guy says, "I'll walk about a mile to the highway, and then a bus will come and get you."
Yes, and it will take you to Jefferson City. So they've only made it to Missouri. So then they get on a bus
Well,
to,
can we back up just a second?
yes.
So so he sees poor Dale
Oh yeah, he's struggling with the trunk.
trunk, and Neil has a little bit of compassion, I guess, or whatever. So he goes over and picks up the other end of the trunk, and then he helps them.
Hmm.
Then they get to the bus. And Jesus, where do they get the names? I forgot to write the name of the bus company down, but it's like some goofy name, like like I guess a Midwest. It wasn't Greyhound, but it was something along those lines. Not Trailways, but I don't know if you
Yeah,
remember Trailways buses, but it was back in the day. So
I do not remember. I had never taken a bus back in the
sorry.
day.
You've never been on a bus like a Greyhound or a Trailways bus to take a trip?
I've just taken like I've been on like a coach bus.
Yeah, that's like a Greyhound bus
Yeah.
was back in the day. But yeah, I can remember taking.
Yeah. Like I've taken one to New York
Oh, okay, yeah.
before.
So
Yeah. But I've never heard of I don't know if I've heard of Trailways.
Trailways, I
Yeah. I
guess
don't know.
whatever it
Everybody in
is
my day
now.
was taking the mega bus to New York. That's what everybody
Yeah,
would take.
gotcha.
They get on the bus and Neil is once again sitting by Dell, just where he wants to be. And once again they are surrounded by some kooky folks. Like there's a young couple directly kind of across the aisle from them that
I
are
forgot.
like making out just like vigorously. The dude is just like on top of this woman. And what's great is Dell's like, look at them. And Neil looks at them and they like catch him. The guy's like, take a picture, it'll last longer. And Dell's like, hoo hoo hoo, they caught you.
Yeah, and Dale's the one that told him to look.
Yeah. And then cut through their everyone's singing. And then Dell's like, Neil, why don't you start one? And Neil starts singing a song, and it's just
Three
he's
coins in
like,
a fountain. It's like
yeah.
sort of hoity-toity, sort of upper crust, like, and nobody.
And nobody knows it. I didn't know it. No one knows it. But then Dell is like, Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. And everyone joins in, which also reminded me if you've listened to our episode on Adam's Family Values, in my third grade math class, when we made math games, our welcome song was to the tune of the Flintstones theme song. So I know it well.
There
It
you
started
go.
with Welcome to our math class. I sang the whole thing on that. So if you want to hear it, listen to the Adam's Family Values episode.
Yeah,
Uh,
don't give him another free sample.
no, no,
So
no. I'm not gonna,
yeah,
I'm not giving away the cow.
there you go. So
They then get to St. Louis. They need to get the rest of the way. They still have a little ways to go. It's not as far. They're
no,
closer, but they still
yep.
got to get to Chicago. And so when they get to St. Louis, Dell gets to selling. He starts being a salesman. And it is hilarious because he keeps selling shower curtain rings to women as if they are like exclusive designer jewelry. And they're buying it.
Unbelievable. Oh, lock, stock, and barrel.
He is hustling.
He is a good salesperson. You can, like he said, these are what one of them was some sort of rare Chinese ivory or something like that,
Yes.
and then these are autographed
Daryl Strawberry.
Daryl Strawberry mood ring or something. It's like just just making up crap, and people are just yeah eating it up.
Yes,
It's
he when he like was selling them to those teenage girls and he was like, "These make you look older, like 18 or 19," and they immediately just hand over cash.
exactly, yeah, like oh, we're gonna get into a club, or we're gonna
Yeah.
get um yeah. So
Hmm.
he's got he made some green
Yeah.
folding stuff.
Even Neil is like, "You're a good salesman."
Hmm.
Neil, who doesn't have much nice to say to Dell, does acknowledge. Meanwhile, Neil's trying to call home, but it's like a dirty payphone, so he's trying to like hold it up to his ear without like touching it as little as possible, just like index finger and thumb and not holding it to his ear. But his wife's not home anyways. So,
It's the answering machine because
yes. So it's
they're at the
they're at
Thanksgiving pageant.
yes, they're at like their daughter's school. And what she's thankful for is that her dad's going to be home for Thanksgiving. So like
Yeah.
hopefully, because right
Yeah.
now it's not looking good because it's the day before Thanksgiving at this point.
Right. I was gonna say, yeah, they've
They eat, Neil and Dell eat since they have some money now. And Neil is trying to ditch Dell again, but he kind
hmm
of like frames it as like, you know what? I'm like holding you back. I think it would be better for each of us if we just go it alone.
yeah,
Because
split
I don't
up.
want to, I don't want to. Traveling with two people is hard to try to find accommodations for two people. So, and once again, Dell, I think, is obviously hurt. And
Yeah,
he's like,
he's
okay, well, I'm going to go then. Okay. He kind of quickly
yeah, just sort of
exits.
well, okay. Well, that's how guys do. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, gotcha. No worries. All right,
Yeah.
see ya.
I
You
can't
know,
show any of these feelings in front of you. Oh,
exactly.
no.
How about them bears?
So, they're at like the St. Louis airport and Neil rents a car. Great. He's going to get his car and he's going to drive the rest of the way home. He gets to the rental car lot. He goes to his space V1. There's no car in V1. This part also, I'm like, sir, that bus is going to come back.
I thought the same
The
thing. It's
rental
like
car shuttle comes back, but instead he walks like along a snowy bank next to the highway. He's like falling. His shoes get destroyed. His hat gets run over. I'm like, wait 5 minutes and the rental car bus will come back.
right. Somebody's going to come back to either get a car, or they're going to drop off.
Right, they're
Some
gonna drop off their car and need to get to the
they
airport.
need to
Like
get to the airport. I know.
the rental car shuttles circulate.
Exactly. So yeah, this one, because I've done that, where you
Yeah.
go, you take the shuttle and you go out to the lot where the car is, and yeah, if
And
it
there's some issue. Although
right,
now
and
I feel like they always have people,
yeah,
they have like a little
there,
office out there. But
yeah, but yeah,
yeah,
even yeah, if you wait a few minutes, the bus will be back.
that
So
was my thought. I was like, my man, you've waited like a day and a half already. Like
right,
waiting like 10 minutes is not gonna kill you, okay? But it is apparently because he decides to trek back to the airport. And
and it's a haul, evidently.
it is a haul. And he gets there looking like he just walked through the 9 circles of hell.
He's lost his hat.
His
He's
face is like dirty, his
dirty.
shoes are ruined.
I like how he
He's
tied his tie around his ears, so I guess to keep him warm, because like he sort of looks like Ebenezer's, or not Ebenezer's, Jacob Marley in Charles Dickens, with the rag tied around his head to keep his jaw from dropping. So,
yes, yes. So the lady at the desk is on the phone, and she's another lady that you've seen in
oh,
other things. Her name's Edie McClurg. She was in the movie Carrie. She's in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She was in Back to School. She was in the
he's a
movie
righteous
Flubber.
dude. He's
Yeah. Yes. And she's done a lot of like voice work and TV. She's been guest star on like a million TV shows. So you've definitely seen this woman in at least
hmm
something. That is what I remember her from, her going, he's a righteous dude.
yeah,
Because she's got that like very stereotypical, also like Midwestern
Midwestern accent.
accent. So she looks at Steve Martin like, oh, what the hell has this man just been through? Um and he's Very
And
for
wouldn't you
me.
think that at the small counter, don't you think that she probably waited on him to rent the car too? Like she would have recognized him, like,
Probably.
oh,
So
you're
she's like,
back.
what happened in the past like half an hour?
Yeah, or however long it took him to walk 3 miles. He said three
Right.
miles.
So he is, remember when Dell called him hostile?
Oh,
Very
yeah,
much that.
he's reached that point and then some.
Yes. So she's like, "How can I help you?" And he's like, "I want you to wipe that fucking smile off your fucking rosy face and give me a fucking car." He says the F word like this is why the movie's
Oh,
rated R. This
uh,
scene. Because
yeah,
he says the F word like 15 times.
easily.
And then she says, "Okay, sir, where's your rental agreement?" And he says, "I threw it away." And then she says, "Oh, well, you're fucked."
I love that. In such a nice, pleasant manner, too.
Yeah.
She's like, oh,
Which
oh.
I'm sure she got a little thrill of that because I would if someone spoke to me that way.
I was going to say, if you wanted to get something out of someone, that's not the way to go about it. So,
No, it is not.
but
Sorry.
yeah, Neil evidently has that mentality of, if you get belligerent enough, you'll get what you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Gee, just
Does that sound
reminded me.
familiar at all?
Yeah, hold on, wait a minute. Flashbacks, deja vu.
Never dealt with anyone like that.
No, no, no. I don't have that issue with anybody.
Oh my God, no. So, he goes out and he tries to get a taxi, and the taxi guy's like, to Chicago? We're in St. Louis. And then he tries to get belligerent with the taxi guy, who is not taking it.
And you'd think that, duh, after the lady, you'd think he'd like get, uh, get a hint that that's not going to get him anywhere.
Right. So, basically after his confrontation with the taxi guy, he ends up laying down in the street. And who should almost run him over? But Del Griffith. He always comes back.
In what has to be the most hideous car.
It's
Although
like
it's
wood
it's a
paneling and like green.
I think it's on. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing. I think it's a Dodge or a Plymouth K-frame car, which is big back in the '80s. But yeah, they've done it up with the fake wood paneling and the green paint and stuff. So
What a
it,
combo.
it's special. It really is. It's special.
Yeah.
Uh,
So Dell demands that the taxi guy's like, move your car. He's like, I'll move my car, but you have to help him up. And
right.
Neil's like, no. So the taxi guy's like, okay. And he decides to help him up by grabbing his junk. I'm not really sure the mechanics of how that would work.
No, uh, but it is funny
It is
afterwards.
funny. So then Neil is in the car with Dell because they always come back together. Uh, and his voice is like Steve Martin on lots of helium.
Hmm.
It sounds ridiculous.
Well, he's had a little
He's
little
had some
trauma.
some trauma. It's exactly what I was gonna say, both physical and emotional.
Yeah. So
Uh,
I'll forgive him for that. So
yeah. So they take turns driving. When Neil's driving, Dell is messing with the seat. He's just moving it back and forth, side to side. It looks like it's one that might be like more automatic than he's used to because it just keeps on like,
and I can remember cars when they had the power seats were like that, had that switch on the side and
yeah,
stuff, and that's it would only move, it only move certain ways. So,
yeah,
but it is funny.
yes. So, Neil is really annoyed. He's like, stop doing that.
You're gonna break
Um,
the seat.
Yeah. And then, of course, when it's Neil's turn to sit in the passenger seat again, he's like, it's broken. He's getting like laying like all the way back or getting shoved into the front windshield. There's like no
You
in
want these
between.
with his face right up against the windshield.
Yeah.
Both of them are very good physical comedians. So,
Yes. Yes. And that keeps getting better. So they finally Neil falls asleep and Dell is singing some Ray Charles. And he's getting I knew something bad was gonna happen because he was getting so into the music. He's swerving.
oh, and but I
Because
love when
he's closing his eyes. He's dancing with his arms. He's not touching the steering wheel.
he's playing the piano, keyboard,
Yes.
like the mess around, whatever that the song is,
Yes.
and he's like, he's
He's
just,
pretending to be Ray Charles, who is blind,
well, he's doing a good job. So,
uh, but not at driving.
well, I'm just saying.
Um, so then this is where things start to go off the rails. He's smoking a cigarette as he always is, and he tries to toss it out the window, but it ends up like kind of coming back around and landing in the back seat. Then he's like, "Yes."
Guilty.
uh,
Did stop though, get it, and I've also had it come back in the window and land in my lap.
oh God.
That made some interesting moments on the highway driving. I would, driving back and forth on long trips. So, yep, been there, done that. So, just saying.
That's well, it makes me happy that I have never smoked cigarettes.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Cigarettes can kill you in more ways than one.
right. Then he's like, wow, it's getting hot in this car. So let me take my coat off because he's wearing like his big winter coat. And then he tries to take it off and like his sleeve gets stuck on one side of the seat on like the little handle. And he's like trying to get it out. He's trying to get it out. So he's like, wait, I'll just like pull, I'll leave it
Yeah,
stuck, but I'll just pull my arms out.
yeah.
But then when he tries to do that with the other arm, that one gets stuck on the handle on the side of the seat. So now both of his arms are stuck, pinned kind of next to him, slightly behind him. And he's trying to control the wheel with his knees. And he's swerving, even worse than when he was just singing Ray Charles.
Yes.
And then they swerve onto an exit ramp and they almost go off the road. Neil is asleep this entire time. He has not stirred.
You
The
gotta,
man is exhausted.
I was gonna say, he must be dead tired.
They've had a
So,
long couple days.
that's true.
So, how well did he sleep snuggled up to Dell? Uh, so they're about to go off the road. He slams on the brakes. They fully spin out and stop before anything happens. And only then does Neil wake up. And he's like, "Oh, what happened?" And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We're good."
We almost hit a deer.
We almost
He's
hit a deer.
like,
That is what he
yeah,
said.
yeah.
Then they get back on the road and they're driving. And these people come up next to them and are trying to yell at them. And Dell's like, "Oh, they're trying to race us." Oh my God, that guy must be drunk. What are they doing? Because these people are like yelling at them. They roll down the window. They're like, "You're going the wrong way." And they're like, "How do they know? They don't even know where we're trying to go."
I love that. It's the other movie I thought of, Dumb and Dumber.
Yes.
I just happened to think.
Um, yes. Then the people keep yelling. And finally, Neil kind of looks down and it's like, oh, we're on the wrong, like the line, the yellow line
Uh-huh.
that
Is
divides like the ways you drive. It's here and it's just covered with snow and we're on the wrong
um,
side of it. And then they look up and there's two semi trucks coming at them. They manage to like squeeze between them and have just the mirrors scraped off and like just awful damage on the side of the cars.
but
So that's terrifying. And this is an excellent like moment of sight gags
yes.
because they're both screaming, first of all. and it's like their lives are flashing before their eyes because there's a flash of them both as skeletons. And then there's a flash where Steve Martin looks over and John Candy is the devil. And he's like, ha 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 ha.
I love that.
And then they make it through. Steve Martin has been gripping the dashboard so hard that like he has to pull his fingers out of the holes they have made. And then they pull over to the side of the road facing the correct way.
And John Candy's bent the steering wheel.
Yes.
The
But they
top half of that has been over.
yes. So they pull over and um get out. He's Dell has hit the brakes so hard the luggage has gone flying. Like it's a
Oh yeah, his
mess.
trunk is in the road.
Yeah. They do obviously eventually get it, but first they're both just like freaking out. Um they're then the car catches on fire and they both are just like laughing, just like hysterically, like they're just losing their minds. It is one of those things like sometimes like so much shit happens, you're just like what else
Yes,
can I do?
exactly. Yeah.
It's
The
just like absurd.
the gods hate us.
Hmm. Truly. And then this is when Neil realizes that Dell had his Diners Club card. Oh, because Dell says that he reserved the this car with Neil's Diners Club card. And Neil's like, "What? Why did you have my Diners Club card? Did you steal my Diners Club card?"
Oh yeah.
But we realized earlier they had accidentally taken the wrong one. And Neil's like, "Give it back, give it back." And Dell's like, "I don't have it." And he's like, "Then where is it?" He's like, "I put it back in your wallet,"
Which, by the way, he'd
which
left his
is
wallet
in the car that is in flames.
in the glove compartment.
And then Neil is so mad he punches Dell in the stomach, but then he trips over his trunk again. Somehow, this car is still drivable.
Uh, it, it,
Not in a legal sense, in just a practical sense.
and again, another great sight gag.
Yes. It's and this part to me also feels very reminiscent of Tommy Boy, right? When they're driving just the like fully
Yeah,
messed up car.
car.
When the deer has like shredded it.
Yeah,
So they drive it to a hotel. Uh Neil's credit cards are not functional. They're much smaller. They're like they remind me of like shrinky dinks. You ever
yeah,
do those
exactly.
things? You put them in the oven. They're like shrinky dinks, so they're like miniature, and with no discernible information on them.
Right.
They're just little bits of burnt plastic. But he has a little bit of cash and he has a nice watch that he is able to barter for a room.
His Piaget.
Yes.
Yes. So,
And then Dell does not. And again, once again, Neil is like, "I'm done with you."
yep.
So
You
Neil's
get
like,
your own room.
"Yep, I got my room.
Yep.
Goodbye." Dell does not. Dell has like $2 and no, he has a Casio, which
Yeah.
the clerk is not interested in.
Yeah.
So he is staying out in the car and it is chilly
Pretty frigid.
because presumably they're like, I would say they're probably in Illinois now
Yeah, I guess so at this
because
point.
St. Louis isn't that far
Right.
from
So,
Illinois. So
yeah.
they're not to Chicago yet, but it's chilly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And poor Dell, he's sitting in this like burned out car, so it doesn't even have a roof. So he's just sitting out in the elements. It's snowing. And he's just sort of reflecting on how, like, it's like you find someone and you like them and you're just like too much and you push them away.
I think he's talking to his wife, and he's
Well,
like,
yeah, at first it seems like he's talking to himself, but then he goes, I wish you were here right now,
yeah,
but I guess that's not going to happen. Not right now, anyway. Or I wish you
right.
were with me,
Yeah.
but I guess that's not going to happen. Not right now, anyway. Which then makes it like, it's so sad.
Oh, I know. As we,
He's so
yeah,
like goofy, but he's so like sweet too. And Neil, who does have a heart, He sees, first of all, he's in a room with two beds.
Right.
He sees Dell outside, just sitting there. And he's like, "Ugh, you know, gotta do the right thing."
Yeah.
So then he opens the door and he's like, "Are you gonna come in here? Like, freeze your ass off outside," basically. So he invites him in to stay in the hotel room. And they have a fun little time. They're just eating a bunch of chips like Doritos and little drinking the like little mini liquor bottles.
Which I guess Dell had in his trunk or something,
I guess
or
so.
carrying
He had
with
like
him.
a variety pack.
Yeah, he had like a collection of them. He's well, what do we have? We got vodka. We got
Yeah, because Steve Martin said like, "Oh, I just had gin," and he's like, "Oh, have you ever had amaretto?" So they've got like quite a variety of liquors there.
yeah.
My favorite part of that scene, as we talked about, John Candy is he pulls out the rum and he's like, "I'm
Uh,
gonna go to Jamaica, man, Irie," and I was like, "Cool runnings!" Jamaica has a bobsled team. So I can't think of John
oh,
Candy in Jamaica without
well, I think it's one
Cool
of his.
Runnings.
I think it's one of his best roles, and yeah, and
Yeah. I think for people my age, especially in like sports teams, like
oh,
we
sure,
quote it all the time. Like my high school soccer coach at practice when we would put our hands in, you know how
yeah,
like in Cool Runnings, the team, they're trying to emulate the Swiss team. So they would be like, eins, zwei, try. So we would like put our hands in and do eins, zwei, try.
oh, okay,
And then, they're talking, and Dell says his only legacy, this is sad again. His only legacy is like some shower curtain rings that like hopefully don't fall down.
yeah,
And Steve Martin says, because Dell has put out his picture of his wife again. Steve Martin is like, you, at the very least, like you have a woman that you love.
yeah,
So, and they go like, they cheers, like, here's to our wives.
to our wives, yeah,
So, again, a
we
sweet moment. And actually, this is what I'll say. Dell says, Neil said, you have a woman you love. And Dell says, love is not a big enough word to
yeah,
describe how I feel for her. Which I was like, oh, which also makes like,
yeah,
I'm not going to spoil ourselves, but
yeah,
it makes later moments like that much more
mm-hmm.
impactful. So, oh, John Hughes, you know what you were doing. Anyways, the next day, which is Thanksgiving Day.
Right. Well, I was gonna say now we're at T Day,
Yes, they
Turkey
are
Day,
driving again in this burned out car. They're both bundled up
and they're singing.
and they're singing. They're in good spirits.
Yeah, I guess they're on the home
Yeah,
stretch.
that's exactly what I was gonna say. They're like getting there. But then they get pulled over by a cop who's like, "You can't drive this car." The
And
cop also is Michael McKean, another familiar face.
another familiar face who
If
we all
you
know and
like
love.
watch movies, this is Spinal Tap, I think, is one of his big ones, for me at least. I know him as the lead singer of Spinal Tap. He's done all the like Christopher Guest movies. He was on Laverne and Shirley also. That is his other big one for me.
Exactly. Lenny and Squiggy.
Yes. I loved was he I guess he was see Lenny in The Little One with Squiggy.
Yeah, he was Lenny. Yeah.
I loved Laverne and Shirley. There was
Oh
a period of
gosh.
time when I asked my mom, I was like, "Can we put L's on all of my shirts too?" And she was like, "No." But
Nothing's
she did
stopping
then
you
buy me a
now.
shirt. She bought me a shirt with an L on it.
Oh, okay.
I did also get like a pin that's like an L. Maybe I
Ooh.
should start wearing that so I can rest in peace to Penny Marshall. But yeah, Michael McKean, you've probably seen him in something. He's done a lot of other TV work. He was on Better Call Saul. Uh
Well, he's done a ton of things.
he's been on Curb Your Enthusiasm, Veep. Like he's on The Diplomat right now. He's been on Broadway, a million things. He was in the movie Clue. He was on Saturday Night Live, which I didn't even realize briefly, but
Yeah, I remember. I think a season.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he's been on like I feel like every TV show that exists. He's everywhere. He used to be on The Good Place, like everything. So, anyways, Michael McKean is the cop, and he's like, you can't drive this car. This is not like street legal. So they end up continuing their journey in the back of a cheese truck. Oshkonagan cheese. I had to write it down. It took me a long time to write it down and spell it correctly.
I kept trying to pronounce it because I kept thinking, how do you? And then finally, I came to the conclusion. But there were a few missteps along the way
Yeah.
before I got to
And
Oshkonagan.
I think the other part that made it hard was like the slogan was like, "Oh my God, it's Oshkonagan."
Mm-hmm.
But they make it to Chicago. And so now Neil is just one little like public transportation train ride away from being
It's the
home.
it's the L.
Yeah, it's the
The
L,
yeah. For
which
those
if
of you
you
who used to watch ER.
I was gonna say it's the elevated train that they take on
Mm-hmm.
ER. Uh or if you're from Chicago or you've watched other things set in Chicago. But for
Right.
me it's ER. It also reminded me of the train in Streets of Fire, reminded me of the L.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Um so anyways, and now it's time to say goodbye. Neil's about to get on the L to go home. Neil is nice. He's great. He's not, it doesn't feel like he's actually trying to ditch Dell this time. He's really just like, okay, this is the end of the journey. He's
Yeah.
grateful. Dell's like, sorry that, I caused all this. And he's like, I'm grateful that you got me here.
Mm-hmm. You got me home.
And they both are like, he's like, say hello to your wife. And he's like, say hello to the wife and kids. Um, they hug. It's sweet. And Neil's on the train. He's just thinking about his kids and his wife and like what their meal will be. But then his mind turns to Dell and all of the hijinks they got into over the past couple of days. And he's like, you know what? Let me turn around. So he goes back to where he got on the L, and Dell is still there, just sitting in the station. And he's like, why are you here? Why didn't you go home? And this is the moment. Dell is like, I don't have a home. My wife died 8 years ago. And it's like, oof.
Yeah. And the way he says it, it's just so heart wrenching.
Oh
But
my
because
God.
he's not emotional about it, but it's so sad, don't
Yeah.
you?
Like
And
his eyes look so sad. Like,
yeah, it's like it's almost like he's been trying to leave, forget all that, or just it doesn't come up or he doesn't bring it up, but that's what he lives with.
yeah. And you can see that's why he's so like much, right? He's
Yeah.
so eager to like be friends with everybody and like he was trying to like stick with Neil
Yeah, to
so
make a
much.
connection. Yeah,
Yeah,
to
because he's
yeah.
just like floating in the world alone.
He has no
Ah,
one. I know. I know. And he is a good person deep down.
yes.
He's
I mean, not even deep down, like he's annoying, but he's never like malicious,
and
you
yeah, like you
know?
said, he goes he doesn't try to hurt people and he's not
Yeah.
mean to people and
He
people
always
for
has
the
the
most
best of
part like him.
intentions. And it
Yeah.
seems like that's why, like, all those people, that's why you have a guy everywhere that can help you and they're willing
Yeah.
to help you.
Yeah, it may not be, a limo. It's a beat
Certainly
up
not.
pickup truck, but it is a guy who's going to give you a ride, to the
Right.
train station. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, as Neil said, like, he wouldn't have gotten back to Chicago
without him, sure.
without him. Like, by Thanksgiving. He
Yeah,
would have gotten back to Chicago eventually, but not by Thanksgiving, which is
yeah,
like the promise that he made to his family.
right.
So, I will also say this part. I think there was a documentary about Steve Martin. It might have been on Apple,
Hmm.
but I've seen a clip from it. And he talks about this movie. And he talks about like bonding with John Candy. And he was like, it was great working with him. Like, we really loved each other,
Hmm.
he said. And this scene originally, in the documentary, like he shows the script and it's like a whole chunk of dialogue. So this was
Uh-huh.
a monologue that John Candy had. And Steve Martin was like, he was performing it to me, and I was sobbing.
Really. So
Yeah.
th-
So they
not
cut
not
most
because
of it.
that's what he was supposed to be doing, but because that's the
But
way
like,
he
he was moved
moved
by
by.
John Candy's performance. But obviously they cut it except for the two lines, like "I don't have a home" and "My wife died 8 years ago."
Boy, I'd love to see it. I wonder if there's
I
any,
know.
if it's anywhere that it could be seen. I'd love to see that.
I don't know. Yeah, because in the thing, like they just show you could see like the text. Um, but and Steve Martin was like, I don't know why they cut it. I guess because it was like near the end and it was like kind of long and like,
Yeah.
people wanted to get it going. And also, if you read about this movie, John Hughes shot like 4 hours worth of footage, and the movie's like an hour and a half. So or like 3 hours, 45 minutes of
Even
footage.
still, yeah, yeah, it's a third
He
of what.
cut out 2 hours.
I'd kind of like to see the, at least part of the extended
I
cut.
know.
I wondered what they
It'll
left
be
on the
like watching
cutting
a
room.
Lord of the Rings movie.
I know, yeah, but
It's the
this
same vibe, right?
journey,
A
yeah,
journey.
exactly. Uh-huh, yeah, yeah. We're just, trying to find, the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
or trying to get
Mount
home.
Doom, Home for Thanksgiving,
Same thing, sure.
an unexpected group of people
Mhm.
clamoring together. You face setbacks and mishaps getting on various vehicles, giant
Modes of
eagles,
transportation.
ents, boats,
It,
all sorts of things.
yep.
So yeah, it could be a Lord of the
Face
Rings movie.
fire, you know,
Exactly.
freezing cold.
Yes. Yes. Hostility from dogs,
Right.
various
Beast, yeah,
animals,
various
beasts.
wild beasts, beasties,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
And the local population.
Mm-hmm. Of orcs. Uh,
Goblins.
yes, exactly. But anyways, so apparently it was a longer scene that they cut, but I mean, I think what they kept was still like very impact. Like I think they probably kept what are like the two most
Right.
heartbreaking lines of whatever. I mean, I don't know what the whole monologue was, but those two lines were pretty
Yeah. Pretty
oof.
jarring because up until
Yeah,
this time you just assumed that, he was going home, and then, he
right.
missed his wife, and
Yeah. Because there was one line earlier where Neil said, like, I've been away from home for too long. And Dell says, I haven't been home in years. But he made
oh,
it sound like he's just been
just
traveling
traveling
for
a lot.
work.
Yeah.
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 But,
Yeah.
all those things like make sense later. Um,
Yeah.
and like all the, when he was like talking to his wife and when he said like love is not a big enough word, like all of these things, it's like, oh God, no.
And to have that picture, he carries that picture with him
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. And it's
And
not a
he,
small picture, by the way,
no,
folks.
it's like a,
It's a 8 by 10.
yeah. And he puts it on the nightstand
He's
everywhere they stay.
Yeah,
Like it's
in a
like
big
that's the thing
frame. Yeah,
he
it's got a
unpacks.
right. That's with him everywhere. So
Yeah. So Neil is like, come on, you're coming
yeah.
with me to the
Hmm.
house. So he brings him to the house. The whole family's there. It's like his kids, his parents, his in-laws, and then finally like his wife is like the last person, and she's like clearly elated to see him, and they have a real moment. And the final shot of the movie is just John Candy's smiling face because it's like, oh, like family, home.
Hmm.
And everyone is also like very kind and welcoming to him too, I will say. Like, I don't know if like Neil gave his wife any like
I don't think he
insight
called though
into
or
the
anything,
journey.
because I think he just showed up, didn't he? He just and then,
Yeah.
but I
Because he
loved
rang the
how,
doorbell.
yeah, because and I loved how he said this. I want you to meet a friend of mine.
Hmm.
Dale. You know, and then
Yeah.
I like how his wife calls him Mister.
Yes. She's like, hello, Mr. Griffith. And he
Yeah,
says, hello, Mrs. Page.
I know that's a nice moment.
It was very sweet at the end, like, and all the
Yeah,
kids greeting him and stuff.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's planes, trains, and automobiles. And we got to see them take planes, trains, and automobiles.
Automobiles. We got buses, pickup trucks,
That car.
it's like the sight gags are just, I just think, just to me it was laugh out loud funny
Yes.
throughout a lot of the movie. The delivery of the lines, you know, John Candy being so sincere and sort of goofy
Hmm.
but you can also, yeah, he is annoying as all get out, but
Yeah.
it's like a dog that won't leave you alone. You can't help but love him,
Right.
or
I think both of them, like with John Candy, it's like, God, he would be so annoying, but also he's like, first of all, coming through to the
yeah,
extent that he can.
yeah,
Things like it's not his fault, like the train broke down or whatever.
right. But
But
he's
like,
he's resourceful.
exactly. Yes. So he's like getting them going. He's also the one that like knows what's up. Like he's like, this plane is not going to Chicago.
What?
Um,
Yeah,
all of
I mean,
that.
and everywhere they go, like you said, he knows somebody.
Yes.
He's got a guy,
Which
or
like says something, right? Like that people know him and like want to help him.
right, or that it's not an imposition for him to ask a favor, or
Yeah.
say, hey, I got a buddy here. Can you help me out? And that was the other
Yeah.
thing. It was like he was introducing Steve Martin as his friend, as his buddy.
Hmm.
Hey, this is a good friend of mine. Can you help him out? I told him you'd help him out with a room or whatever. So
Yeah. So like you have John Candy who's like a lot, but he's like so nice and like helpful that like you can't really be mad at him. And then you have Steve Martin who is like kind of hostile and uptight, but also like you get it because it's like the John Candy of it all, but also just like traveling and like just trying to get home and like
hmm
all of this stuff. It's like, so you get it. Like you have some like sympathy and empathy for both of them, even though there are qualities about them that are not the best.
well, and we learn in the movie also that Neil has his own faults, as John Candy points out.
Yes, yes. And but also you see that like he made a promise to like his wife and kids to be home and like he
Right.
just wants to get home.
He
And I
just
think
wants to get
that's
home.
something if you've ever been traveling and like your flight's delayed or whatever, like that feeling you wouldn't necessarily act like him, hopefully. But like the feeling behind it, I
Right.
think is a relatable one.
Yeah, whatever it takes,
Yeah.
whether,
When it's like I have somewhere to be. I want
right,
to go, especially when you're going home.
home, home.
I feel like especially like no matter what, when it's like time to go, for me, like I love to travel, but like when it's time to go home,
You're ready.
I'm ready to be home.
I get you. I mean, I either want a transporter room or I want the ruby slippers.
Exactly. That's what I like the actual process of traveling sucks. Like I like being in other places, but like that the rigmarole of it
I know
is just
people
the
always talk,
worst.
oh, the trip is, it's the journey. Nah, it's being there.
Yeah, no. Maybe if you're taking like a cool scenic train ride, if you're on like the Trans-Siberian Railroad or something,
Or
yeah.
the Orient Express, or
Yes.
yeah.
Or like, even like a cross country train. If you're like, great,
Yeah.
that the
If you're
journey
going
is
across, like across Canada, one of those
when I
sightseeing
went with my family,
trains.
we took an Alaska cruise and we took a bus up into the Yukon territory and then a train back down.
Oh, neat.
Like that was very cool. That is about the journey. But
Mm-hmm.
like often you're just getting on a plane to go somewhere. That's not about the journey. It's just
Mm-hmm.
about, it is about the destination, in fact.
Right. Yeah, you're inside of a tube with wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like if you're on just like the Acela Northeast.
Yeah.
The train ride from like Maryland to New York is not super scenic,
No, it's not. And
for example.
it's not super, it's not like you're in the bar car, the dining club,
Right.
the dining car.
Look
So
at lovely like suburban Delaware. Ugh.
really,
This is exciting. Not really. Um,
it's not like being in Wichita.
of course not.
No,
No.
at night.
Or yeah, the train ride from Wichita, Kansas to Jefferson City,
Jefferson's
Missouri.
Missouri.
Ooh.
So I
I
know.
bet
Woo
that's full
woo.
of flat green fields. But yeah, like I think just that the sentiment behind his actions, you get
hmm
it. Would
Yeah.
I ever go up to a car rental counter and be like, you need to give me a fucking car and wipe the fucking smile off your fucking. No,
No.
I would never do that. But I get feeling that. I would feel that way.
Yeah.
If
But
I was like, finally, I'm going to get home and I get to the spot where my car's supposed to be and there is no car there, I would probably feel that way.
yeah, I might go ape shit at that moment, but yeah, when you get back, I always like to think of myself as maybe being the type of personality as John Candy, just sort of like
Yeah.
go with the flow, and
Which he
try to make
says, which
try to make the best of the situation. Yeah.
he tells Steve Martin, you got to go with the flow. And Steve Martin's like, the car caught on fire. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't, like, what am I supposed to do?
Do about that. Yeah. So,
Like, oh, it was out the rental car. He was like,
oh, oh, oh,
I paid for a car and there was no
no
car.
car.
So I do see in that moment, it's like, I get where you're both coming from. Because, like, I
Exactly.
do want to go with the flow, but also if I paid you money for you to render me a service, then that service better be rendered or I will be
Toot,
angry.
toot sweet, as they would say in
We.
in Francais. So,
Exactly. But yeah. So I think it's a fun thing because you can kind of, I feel like probably, hopefully, I mostly lean John Candy, but I do like also very much get Steve Martin.
oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think probably on the surface I can be more John Candy. Inside, probably more
Or
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin. So,
Yeah.
well,
Like if my rental car wasn't there, I would probably scream and yell and cuss like in the parking lot. And then when I got back, I would be like, okay, let's problem solve. I also would not throw away my rental agreement.
exactly. So, yeah, because that's going to come in handy at
Yeah.
some point.
You can see he was getting so frustrated. He was not rational, right? Just wait for the bus to come back.
Right, right. Yeah. You don't have to,
Keep your
charge
head on
off.
straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So, but yeah, I think that it's a good movie. Like, just it captures some of the stress of the holidays. It captures some of the difficult personalities we might encounter around the holidays, but also at its core, the love and the family and home.
very good. Yeah. And maybe that out of an unusual twist of fate comes a friendship or
Hmm.
a relationship, or whatever that with
Right.
someone you would maybe never seek out on your own, or you on surface it would be like, oh, I don't want to talk to that person, I don't want to be with that person or know that person, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. And I feel like if I was on a trip like that and I kept getting matched with like that person, I would be like, the universe is telling me something that I
you know
just have to be friends with this person.
I never thought of it that way. Yeah, it's like, that maybe, yeah, there's somebody there's some bigger power here than just me.
Like, I believe in coincidences, but at some point, it's a lot of coincidences.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I do or not. I don't know. Maybe one, but like, yeah, one time maybe,
It's like
you
5 times they keep.
exactly, yeah. So it's more it's fate, it's kismet, or whatever you want to
Exactly.
call it in your part of the world, wherever you
Yeah,
may be. So,
I
well,
agree.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I liked it. It kind of, not that I really need a big push to get me into the Thanksgiving spirit. So, even
Mhm.
though everybody keeps trying to throw me into Christmas already. So,
Oh my God, I went to Target like no on like October 31st or November 1st, and it was already full Christmas. I'm like, wasn't it Halloween half a second ago?
it's, I was talking to somebody. Oh, it was about, there's up in Pennsylvania, Hertz does the Christmas lights, I guess, on their property
Mm,
but they don't start until the day after Thanksgiving. And I thought, good for them, because
hmm.
because I said, is it? Let me guess, they're open now. They're doing it. Oh, no, 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 no. They don't start till the day after Thanksgiving.
Nice. I'm
So,
going to some lights thing, but it is the weekend after Thanksgiving.
okay.
And my family, we're getting the Christmas tree on Thanksgiving
Oh, that's a nice
just
tradition.
because
Yeah,
we don't usually do that, but it's just like the place that we get our tree is open and we're all
off.
off. So,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
um,
So, but yeah. And I think it's funny for me because for planes, trains, and automobiles, usually like I've always mostly spent Thanksgiving like home, so I don't usually travel for Thanksgiving, so it's like
Uh-huh.
not I don't relate to like that piece of it, but it is always something, you know.
Oh, yeah.
When I
So,
have traveled for Thanksgiving, it's always a motley crew.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, so you traveling to another destination though, but you're with other people, not trying to
Yeah.
get to, not
No.
trying, you're not
Yeah,
alone
usually
trying
it's
to
like
get.
me and my immediate family are traveling
Oh,
together,
okay.
or like
Gotcha.
me and my mom are traveling together.
Yeah.
So, though the one time when I was trying to go to Cincinnati, it was not for a holiday. It was just to meet up with family.
Hmm.
Um, I was traveling myself by myself to meet my family, and that
Okay.
is when they sent us to Columbus because there was a storm over Cincinnati, and I did feel like Steve Martin.
You were ready to
I
pull
bet
pull a
if
full
there was a
Neil.
John Candy, he could have gotten me some dinner though.
He would have found you something to eat. Yep. He would have
He
found
would have.
he would have
He would
either
have been like,
found
I
a
know a guy, and
right
gotten somebody like, in the back to give me
who
some
has a
food.
taco stand or
Right.
a
He would have
food
known the people
truck.
at the pizza restaurant to give me some leftover,
There you go. So
if only.
if
But
only.
there were no John Candies that I encountered that
Oh,
day. So, um, but yeah. So do you travel for Thanksgiving?
it depends. If every now and then we'll go down and visit my sister in West Virginia. So
Hmm.
if she has family like her daughters and stuff, if they're coming, there's only so much room at the inn,
Hmm.
so those are the years that we don't go down, and that's fine. And in all in all honesty, usually Denise works, so she usually gets stuck working because she takes
Hmm.
off. They have to alternate holidays, so if she works Thanksgiving, she gets off Christmas. So it depends. So I like going to my sister's for Thanksgiving. That's my favorite holiday to travel. I know that sounds
Hmm.
odd, but that's where I'd like to be, with them, because
Hmm.
that's always a big tradition. We go to the Marshall football game this Saturday after Thanksgiving, and
Mm.
that's always nice. But
Yeah.
you stay. You
We stay local. Yeah,
do
we are
you?
with like family friends. So it's just,
Okay.
everybody gathers, but it's like I'm driving like 20 minutes,
Well, that's
not
good
like
though. Yeah.
from New York to Chicago. But it's nice. We used to like when we used to live really close, it was like they lived like around the corner. So
Okay.
it was really convenient. But yeah, no, it's nice. It's nice to be with everybody
Oh yeah.
and have our little place cards. In the past, we've occasionally most of my life we've done Thanksgiving local though, like at
Mm-hmm.
home in your or with like relatives. Like at one point, both sets of my grandparents lived like 5 minutes away, so like we would do it at maybe at my
Yeah.
grandmother's house, but she lived down the street. Um, there were times we'd gone to like my aunt's house in Kentucky a
Mm-hmm.
year or so. I think maybe just once. We've been to Texas
Oh, okay.
um
That's a long
before.
trip.
Yeah, well, we flew.
Yeah, but even
Uh
still, I mean, that's yeah.
the good thing about going to Texas at Thanksgiving, usually snow's not a problem.
Right. You don't
um
have to worry about weather.
yeah,
So,
it did snow once when we were there for Easter, but
ooh,
that was
cool.
very weird. Snow in Dallas on Easter,
On
but
Easter.
mhm. But yeah, usually we're local for Thanksgiving, so no big trips, no planes, trains, or just automobiles. Just a very
Just
short
automobiles.
automobile. Yeah, no planes or trains, but occasionally a plane. But yeah, just usually not. It's usually it's more low key, which is nice.
Yeah, it's always nice, I think, to be in familiar surroundings, or to be around loved ones. One year we did go to Williamsburg for Thanksgiving.
Mm,
Um, Denise and her mom and myself, and I think it was just the three of us. No, I'll take that
mm,
back. It was Denise's sister, and as well as and her two daughters. So
mm.
we all decided to just get away and not worry about having anybody cook. So we went out for Thanksgiving dinner, which was kind of an experience unto itself, because
Yeah.
evidently a lot of other people like to do that too. Yeah, so we ended up like, we thought, oh, should we make a reservation? Evidently we should have. So, so
Oh
we
gosh.
we ended up getting turkey dinner, but it was very crowded. So,
Yeah. The only time I studied abroad in Belgium, my junior year of college, and so I was there for
oh, for
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
So they have like the school, like our house put on a Thanksgiving dinner. So we went to a restaurant and we had like the Belgian version of Thanksgiving. But it
Oh,
was good. We had like pumpkin soup and we had like two kinds of stuffed turkey. One was stuffed with like a mushroom thing and one was stuffed with like
ooh,
a cranberry sauce. So we had like potato croquettes. So it was like not like
oh, okay.
exactly
Yeah.
everything. And then, we're also with like people from the place that I lived was full
Mm-hmm.
of, it was like this huge, it used to be a convent. So there was like 70 students that lived in it.
Oh, okay.
And like 20, there was like 20 of us from here.
Mm-hmm.
There were like 20 Belgians and then 30 everybody
From
else.
all over the place.
So it was also kind of interesting, like sharing it with
Yeah.
other people, right? Like
Did
we
they all
sat,
buy into the Thanksgiving thing, or
yeah,
as
I think everybody talked about, I don't remember it. I can like picture it, but I don't like if we all said a like, what are you thankful for
thankful
kind of
for?
thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we did do something like that though, because we sat with
That's
like
nice.
the our house was divided into units, so you sat with your unit. So it's like me and my roommate and like one other person are from the United States, but we had like a couple Belgians. We had someone from India, someone from Slovakia, someone from Poland, someone
Mm,
from the Czech Republic. So a lot of them just had never experienced anything like this before. So it's kind of
sure.
cool to,
Okay, so it was their first time experiencing a
yeah,
Thanksgiving.
yeah. One or two, like my roommate who was from the Czech Republic she had been an exchange student in the United States, but she lived with like a very like religious fundamentalist family, so they might not have done Thanksgiving anyways. She lived with Seventh Day Adventists in Idaho. So I was like,
Mm, okay.
me and you know a very different America.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah.
Come
So
visit us in Maryland and see what's up. But yeah, so that was like the only like really different Thanksgiving experience I had. So
that's kind of
it was
neat
just
though.
interesting to be like, because normally I'd be with my family and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting take to see like be in a different country with people from different countries to celebrate it.
Nice.
So,
And then and let them know what the American experience is like, I guess, for
hmm,
for
yeah.
our traditional holiday.
I
So
just played that scene from Adam's Family Values.
that was a funny scene.
It was great. Oh man, Christina Ricci. But yeah, so I really enjoyed Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Thank you for picking it. So I finally had the opportunity
Well,
to
good.
watch it.
So and I'm looking forward to your selection for the holiday season as well. So
Yeah.
and
I'm excited for mine too. Another
well
Thanksgiving
good.
movie to come.
Okay.
Um,
Staying
I
in the
would
spirit.
say yes. For anyone who's not watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I think watch it. It's fun. It's funny. It's heartwarming. It's uh if people can handle the F word, it's fun for the whole family.
Oh God, yeah, I was good. As I said in the beginning of the recording, that was one of the things that my mother laughed throughout and that was one of the scenes that she laughed loudest at, which I thought, it might be, not that my mother was easily offended, but it's just that,
Yeah.
you don't expect your mother to laugh at, somebody yelling the F word like 18 times over and over again. But she was just, yeah, she thought the whole movie was funny and
Yeah.
sweet. So
Yeah. It's a good balance of the two.
it
So,
is. So
especially if you like a road movie, if you like a buddy movie.
I agree. And then at the time, probably two of the biggest comic talents
Hmm.
that there were, either, whether it was John Candy, who was from Second City Television and,
Hmm.
did movies, a bunch of movies, and Steve Martin, who, had, well, done SNL and also his own comedy routines and movies.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think putting them together, that was one of the combinations that, sometimes people don't really click, but I think they did. So and it
Hmm.
came across on screen,
Yeah. And like I said, from what Steve Martin said, they also really gelled
really bonded.
um
So
personally. And I think,
in,
well,
enjoy the movie, if those of you who haven't got a chance to see it, and if you've never seen anything by John Candy, I think it's one of his better performances.
definitely. And even if you have seen it, Thanksgiving time, great time to
Yeah,
revisit it.
break it out, break it out. It's
Yes. You can
you can watch it
stream it for free.
for free, exactly. So and it is uncut. So
Yes. Although if you watch it on Pluto TV, there are ads that come up at like
yes,
not at random times.
I know
That's the
it's
only
not
my
even
only
like a
gripe with
break in
them.
the. It's not
It's
even a
like
break in
not,
it.
yeah, it's not where they would put a commercial like on TV. It's just like,
No,
well, randomly,
I
like,
know, and then it just breaks
and
right
then
back
right
into
back
the
in.
movie. Yeah, so you know,
It does it. It is jarring, just so you know.
yeah, yeah.
No shade to Pluto TV, but it is abrupt.
They don't do it in the middle of any of the F word bombs, but you
No,
know, but just saying, you
it
know,
doesn't feel like natural moments to do it though.
no, there's
But
no rhyme or reason.
yeah.
So anyway,
Well, thank you all for joining us once again. Please be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to this so you can get all of our episodes when they come out every Monday. Please rate and review, especially if you have something nice to say. If you don't have something nice to say, that's okay because we like us. You can also follow us on Instagram at Some of Our Parts Pod. You can see all the movies that we've talked about. We've covered a lot. We've been doing some kind of thematic things over the past couple months. So we've got Thanksgiving now. We did Veterans Day. We did spooky season. We did football movies. So we're trying to be topical and keep up with the times. And going forward, we'll do some more holiday season movies. Um, and you can find little previews of what's coming in the coming days. And with that, bye bye.
take care.